I think the row exemplifies it pretty well. And that's also so much of Ashley and Mary Kate and the row's aesthetic. And it's also very specific to Los Angeles and to the space that it was in. But I think in terms of it being very simple and clean, but having a lot of different kinds of furniture and materials mixed into a space that still feels very balanced and spacious and edited, I think does a good job of that, of exemplifying that. To pull pieces together in a space, I think that you have to start with the space and with the people. And I think that especially in Los Angeles, but all over, there are so many different kinds of architecture and spaces and so many different ways that people live. If it's a home, if it's a commercial space, so many different ways that people will use it. And I think you really have to consider what the space requires and what the people require, how people will interact in the space. And that determines the layout of the space. It determines what materials you can use. It determines everything. And so I think to start, that is where I would start. I, in general, don't love contemporary furniture. I really like to use vintage pieces and antiques. And I think because of that, you are limited, especially sometimes with comfort and functionality in certain ways. And so I think that in terms of building custom pieces, I will look to the ends of the earth to try to find the vintage piece or the antique piece, and then know that we have to build some things. And sometimes it's determined by the space and by the size. And if it's a really specific space and you know that there's not a table that's that size, you're probably going to have to make it. But I think usually especially for me, it's usually sofas and beds. And I think that makes the most sense, because a sofa, not for every room, but you want a room that has the most comfortable sofa that you can just sit in and be really comfortable. And so I think that's kind of the beginning of that path of deciding when to do custom or not. I think you can rework certain pieces to make them customized to the space, meaning you can reupholster something in a fabric that is more appropriate for the space. You can refinish wood so that the color or the tone or the finish on it feels more appropriate for the space. You can change the size of things. So I think in terms of that, it's not necessarily starting from scratch customization in what I'm talking about, but I think you can repurpose and reuse things or change things to make them appropriate for the space or the lifestyle of the people living there. When people are considering a custom piece, I think that they should know that a drawing does not look the same as what something will look like in its actuality. And 2D is very different from a physical piece. And that very slight proportion changes will change the way something feels significantly. The width of a sofa arm that's 4 inches versus 7 inches will change the entire personality. And I think to be really mindful of that, and of knowing that, all sofas for the most part have 2 arms, a back, and a seat, and you can make the slightest changes. And that's what's the difference between a mid-century piece and a deco piece and, a Victorian piece. And so I think it's really being mindful of what you're trying to create, and then putting that in every detail of every curve and every line and every part of it.